What's up everyone, it's Bones here. In today's video, I'll be featuring Despia, but before I begin, if you could happen to click on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons, it would be greatly appreciated as it goes a long way in supporting the channel and shows me that you like content like this. Clicking on those notification bells would also mean a lot as they notify you when I upload on the channel. So, a couple of weeks ago, we saw a third place regional list that played the Nadir Servant in order to continue playing through Ash, except the way that they did it was with Springen's kit and the branded in High Spirits. So because we are getting Guiding Quem in Cyberstorm access, I do want to show a new line we have available in which you don't have to play kit to do something similar, but we're going to start here with the branded fusion. Our opponent ashes it as we're then going to activate the Nadir Servant. Keep in mind that if we don't have Cartesia, this does change a little bit, but I just want to show what you can do with Cartesia as well, as we're going to get ourselves the Guiding Quem, and this card reads that this is always treated as a Dogmatica and Despia card, and if this card is normal or special summoned, you can send one Fallen of Albaz or one card that mentions it from your deck to the graveyard. If a card leaves the extra deck, you can target one Fallen of Albaz or one monster that mentions it in your graveyard, except Quem, and special summon it. You can only use each effect of Quem once per turn. So this is an interesting card because with stuff like Bestial Saronir, you can get 2 sends for certain branded spell and trap cards that can change how you do things a little bit. It also can be targeted by branded in red because it's always a Despia card. It can be searched from Nadir Servant, as you see, because it's always a Dogmatica card. And there's different implications that it has, as you'll see in the video. But we're going to normal summon the Quem. We're then going to get its effect, sending the Albaz. And then from here we can go to the end phase, as we're then going to set the branded in red off of the Albion. And then from here we'll go to our opponent's turn, in which we'll be able to use the branded in red at any point. We'll go into our Lubellion as we're then going to use its effect, and this will pitch the Cartesia from our hand as we're going to go into our Mirror Jade, and that will trigger the Guiding Quem as we're then going to be able to bring back the Cartesia, giving us an extra fusion on our opponent's turn, whether you want to go into Dragos Depelia or if you want to go into the Grand Binol. There's different options that you can do, though unfortunately it does take a bit of resources from your hand. As you saw, we're only on one card, basically breaking us even and leaving us vulnerable to another interruption. Now, in this specific video, I'm probably going to do a lot of 2.5 3-card combos, and it's because they are all Quem combos, and we're going to start this one with the new trap card. During either player's turn, you can immediately after this effect resolve, synchro summon using monsters you control as material, including a dragon monster. You can only use this effect of Etude once per turn. While you control a bestial monster, any monster sent to your opponent's graveyard because they tributed it for a ritual summon or used it as material for a fusion, synchro, or link summon is banished instead. So that's an important effect to remember because this can become a floodgate in certain matchups, and we're then going to start here by activating the Nadir Servant. We'll be able to send the Albion, get ourselves the Guiding Quem, and I'm sorry that there's no card arts here. This is kind of annoying, but unfortunately EDO Pro hasn't updated them yet. And we're then going to be able to normal summon our Guiding Quem as we're going to use its effect. This will get us a send for the Albaz as we'll set the Etude, and then we'll use the Albion in order to set the branded in red from our deck as we'll go on to our opponent's turn. And now from here we can use the branded in red, get back our Albaz as we'll be able to go into our Albion, use the Albion's effect in order to fuse away the Albion in our graveyard along with the Ad Libitum into our Masquerade or Quirites, whichever you want to go into. But then from here we'll be able to use the Ad Libitum, which will get back the Guiding Quem. And then from here you can use the Guiding Quem's effect, chain the Etude if you would like to, use the Etude as well, as we're going to synchro away into the Lulu Wallace. And this is a new synchro that reads 1 level 4 tuner plus 1 non-tuner monster once per turn. If a card leaves either extra deck, you can make all face-up monsters you currently control gain 500 attack. Then you can negate the effects of one face-up card on the field until the end of this turn. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard, because it was sent there this turn, you can special summon one light spellcaster monster whose attack equals its own defense from your hand or deck. You can only use this effect of Lulu Wallace once per turn, so that's most of the time times going to be bringing out Guiding Quem and Cartesia. The OG Ecclesia is also another option if that ever comes in to play, probably in the Dogmatica deck, which I may do a video on at a later point in time, but we're going to then be able to send the Retribution here, as the Retribution will be able to get us our Branded in Red back, giving us the follow-up in order to get back the Guiding Quem if we have to. But one cool thing that I would definitely like to point out here is the fact that this is a negate if your opponent does happen to go into something from the extra deck, or something just leaves their extra deck for any face-up card on the field. And another cool thing that we get here is that because we synchroed away the Albion, we'll also be able to get ourselves follow-up in the form of Branded Fusion. Now this next one will be the Guiding Quem along with Branded Fusion, and this one is sort of a weird combo. You'll see what I mean momentarily. It's usually better if you have an extra monster, but we're going to use the Quem, sending the Cartesia. We'll use the Branded Fusion now, which will be able to send the Albaz and Mercarier. We'll go into the Rinbrum, as we're then going to get the Guiding Quem's effect, which will bring back the Cartesia. Now we can use the Cartesia in order to fuse away into the Grand Ganol, and we're going to fuse away the Rinbrum as well. So we're going to use the effect of the Grand Ganol to send the Albion to our graveyard from our extra deck, as we'll then be able to use the Cartesia in order to get itself back to hand, then use the Albion in order to set the Etude from our deck, and then from here we'll be able to go onto our opponent's turn, as we're going to use the Grand Ganol. Obviously, you can use it at any point you may want to. This is another thing that I would like to show that you can do, in which you can use the Etude now in order to go into a Synchro 8, because Albaz is a dragon monster, so you don't have to rely on the Bestials. But this gives us a Draco Berserker of the Tenyi, while also giving you the options of either going back into your Rinbrum or just fusing away with your Albaz and still having the on-field effect of the Grand Ganol, which, if not even a big interruption, it can potentially get you into the Synchro, which is still kind of nice now that that's out. So now I want to get into the branded opening plays, and there's a few of them that I want to go over, because since it is a Despia card, you'll see we can actually bring it out, but we're not going to do that, funny enough, just yet, as we're going to use the Tragedy Chainlink 1, Aluber Chainlink 2. Tragedy will be able to get us the Guiding Quem though, because that's also an option on the table. So if you still want to play around Droll better, since Quem doesn't add a card to hand, I still think that this is the better way, but we're going to go for the Quem, use its effect, which will send the Branded Retribution, then we can use our Branded Fusion. This will allow us to go into our Albion by sending the Albaz and the Lubellion, and then from here we'll be able to use the Albion in order to go into our Lubellion. We'll fuse away the Tragedy with it, as we're going to then use the effect of the Lubellion, go into our Mirror Jade. We'll then be able to use the Lubellion from our graveyard, tributing the Albion, as we'll use the Lubellion in order to get the Etude, and then from here we'll be able to use the Retribution to get back our Branded Fusion, and then from here we can go into the end phase and use the Albion's effect, which will get us the Branded Expulsion, as we're then going to go into our opponent's turn, and we're going to use the Etude now in order to synchro away into our Lulu Wallith, but then from here we're also going to use the Mirror Jade effect, use the Expulsion, and then from here we can get ourselves 2 bodies on board. You don't have to use the Mirror Jade effect if you want to keep the Tragedy on board, but you'll see that we are going to get the Banish of the Tragedy, which will net us a search, as we also get the Guiding Quem and the Lulu Wallith effect to negate, as we're just going to negate our Aluber. Obviously you do it when you want to, but I just want to put it there as a reminder that it is an option you have available to you. And because of the way that we did this, another cool thing is that during the end phase we will also be able to get the Albion's effect, which will get us a search for another branded spell trap card. Now for this next one, we're going to see what we get with Saronir plus the branded opening, and we're going to start this one again in the draw phase by using the Saronir in order to go into our Guiding Quem. From here we can use the Saronir's effect as Chainlink 1, the Quem as Chainlink 2. We'll send the Retribution along with the Branded Fusion, so you can see how we basically have instant access to Branded Fusion without necessarily opening it, or Aluber, which is definitely kind of nice for this deck's consistency. But we're going to use the Branded Fusion in order to go into our Albion by sending the Cartesia and the Albaz, and because we have the Guiding Quem on the field, we'll also be able to get the effect of Quem, and you'll see that we're going to use the Albion as Chainlink 2, as we're going to fuse away into Lubellion with the Saronir in graveyard and the Albaz, pitch the evenly, as we'll be able to chain the Cartesia in order to go into the Grand Ganol, and then from here we'll be able to go into our Mirror Jade, then use the effect of Grand Ganol, which will be able to send the Lubellion. We'll use the Lubellion to bring that back by tributing the Albion, get the Etude off of the Lubellion, as we're going to use the effect of Cartesia now, get that back to our hand, use the effect of the Albion in order to get the Branded Expulsion, and then from here we can go on to our opponent's turn, and this is where I want to point out something important. You should always synchro away your Grand Ganol, because you have to remember that this is a floodgate if you control a Bestial monster, so being able to go into our Lulu and still having the Grand Ganol live, because the effect is able to trigger when it's on your field or graveyard, just makes it the more logical play in my opinion, as from here we'll then be able to use the Mirror Jade, use the Expulsion, again just showing everything that we have available to us. Now I want to come back to a similar 3-card combo, but this time I want to take a different approach with it, and we're going to go into our Guiding Quem by pitching the Saronir, use the Saronir. This will get us into the Branded Fusion access, as we're going to send the Retribution and the Fusion, and from here we'll get back our Branded Fusion with the Retribution, go into the main phase, activate the Branded Fusion, and then from here we'll be able to send the Cartesia along with the Albaz, use the Guiding Quem along with the Albion, as we're then going to get ourselves the Fusion Summon for the Lubellion along with the Revival of Cartesia. We can use the effect of the Lubellion along with the Cartesia now. We'll go into the Grand Ganol, and we're going to use the Cartesia to fuse away our Albion this time around, because we don't have the Lubellion in graveyard the way that we're doing this. And the difference for it is, if you want to be able to set up a Branded in Red play in which we'll be able to send the Ad Libitum off our Grand Ganol, we'll go to the end phase, we can use the Cartesia in our graveyard, then use the Albion. The Albion will get us the Branded in Red, and now we have the Mirror Jade along with the Ad Libitum in graveyard and the Branded in Red set up. So again, I just wanted to show this because it's a second option that you can take with the same 3 cards. So in most cases, you'll likely be using the first version. Now this is another cool one that we have here, and this is a similar combo to the one on a YouTube channel that I'll post down below, but I made some changes to it in regards to this build, which is why I'm still showing it. But we're starting here by using the Lubellion. We'll be able to get ourselves into the Saronir. We'll then use the Quem in order to use its effect, at itself the Mercarrier in graveyard, as now we can get the Saronir's effect, banish the Mercarrier. This will net us a search for the Albion, as we'll then be able to go into our Lubellion by tributing the Saronir, use the Saronir's effect. This will get the Branded Fusion in the graveyard, as we're now going to use the Lubellion to get the Branded Lost, and now we can use the Albion to send the Retribution, get ourselves a draw, as we're going to chain the Retribution to get ourselves back the Branded Fusion, and then from here we'll just get a random draw, and it is going to be important that we do get that draw later on in the combo, but we're going to send the Cartesia and the Albaz for the Albion, as we're going to trigger the Guiding Quem as well. The Branded Lost will be Chainlink 3, as we'll get ourselves the Springin's Kit, and then from here we'll be able to bring back the Cartesia, as we're going to go into our Lubellion, use the Lubellion, pitching the Evenly, chain the Cartesia in order to go into our Grand Ganol, and then from here we'll be able to go into our Mirror Jade, use the Grand Ganol's effect. This will get us a send for the Ad Libitum, as we're going to use the Springin's Kit now, special summon it out on board, use its effect, which will get us a search for the Branded in Red. Then we can put back the card that we drew into the deck, use the Mirror Jade in order to free up a zone, but banish the kit along with using the effect to get the Albion in the graveyard, because we won't be able to get the Albion on board in the graveyard. But now we're going to go into our Dragos Depelia with the Branded in Red, use the Ad Libitum to get back the Mirror Jade, and now we can go on to the end phase, which will get back the Cartesia, and then from here we can use the Albion in order to get the Branded Etude onto our board, and you'll see where this is kind of going, as we're now going to use the Etude on our opponent's turn. We'll be able to synchro away the Albion with the Guiding Quem into our Lulu Wallace. Now for this next combo, this is similar to one of the ones before, but I wanted to show what happens when you get that extra card. And from here we're going to start here by activating the Lubellion. We'll be able to get us to search for the Saronir, as we're then going to normal summon the Quem, use the effect of Quem. This will send the Cartesia, use the Branded Fusion in order to send the Albaz and the Mercarrier for the Rinbrum, as we'll then be able to trigger the Quem, get back the Cartesia, use the Saronir, pitch the Mercarrier, or banish the Mercarrier, and then we'll get the search off the Mercarrier for the Albion, as we'll then be able to tribute off the Saronir for the Lubellion, use the Saronir's effect, as we're then going to send the Retribution, use the Lubellion, which will be able to get us the Branded Etude, use the Cartesia now, which will be able to go into the Grand Ganol, as we'll be able to use the Grand Ganol's effect in order to send the Albion. we can also use the effect of the Saronir in order to send the branded in red, as we're going to use the effect of the Cartesia in order to get itself back to hand, and then we can also use the Retribution along with the Albion in our graveyard in order to get extra cards, but we're going to use the branded red here first, get back the Albaz, go into another new fusion, the Albion, the Incandescent Dragon, and this one reads that Fallen of Albaz +1 light spellcaster monster cannot be used as fusion material. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. You can only use each of the following effects of Albion once per turn. During your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target 2 monsters in any graveyards, special summon both monsters, 1 on each field. If this card is in your graveyard, you contribute 4 monsters in the extra monster zones, and each player center main monster zones, and if you do, special summon this card. So do keep in mind that there's another card that reads similar to this, except that Expulsion is able to summon from the banished pile as well, which is more nuts in my opinion. The fact that it can't be super polyed is definitely kind of nice, but from here we'll use the Albion now. We'll be able to get ourselves the Expulsion, and this is basically just a backup Expulsion while also having the Bestial on board with the Etude, which gives us the Floodgate-like ability to banish our opponent's stuff whenever they choose to tribute it for a ritual summon, or use it as material for a Synchro Link or fusion monster. But we'll use the Expulsion now, bring out the monsters, and I'm just going to use the Albion as well, giving our opponents 2 monsters, which again, I know may not be the most desirable thing, but I am only using the Albion's effect for the combo, and it's only meant to be a backup to what happens if your branded Expulsion is hit by Ghost Spell or whatever, as we're going to bring back the Quem, and you'll see the Quem is able to get us its effect to send, as we'll also get the Etude to go into our Lulu Wallace using the Grand Ganol along with the Quem, as the Quem sends the Albion to the graveyard. And I want to show another combo with Nadir's Servant here, except that everything is going to go through this time, as we're going to use the Aluber, get ourselves the branded Lost. From here we can activate the branded Lost, activate the branded Fusion. We'll be able to go into our Rinbrum, or we'll go into the Albion, I'm sorry, as we're going to use the effect of the Albion in order to use, but we're going to use the effect of Branded Lost first, which will get us the Mercurier, and then we'll be able to banish the Mercurier along with the Albaz in order to go into our Rinbrum, and then we can use the effect of the Mercurier for the search of the Albion. From here we'll use the Lubellion in graveyard, tributing the Albion, as we'll then use the Albion's effect. This will get us the Etude, as we'll use the effect of the Nadir Servant to get ourselves the Fallen of Albaz, and then from here we can use the Albion to send the Retribution. We'll then use the Retribution to get back our branded Fusion, as we'll now be able to use the effect of the Albion as it resolves to get ourselves the extra draw. We'll then use the Albion on the end phase in order to get us the branded in red, and then we can use the Lulu Wallace in order to bring us out the Guiding Quem from our deck, as we're then going to use the Quem in order to get the send for the Albion, which is kind of cool here because now it's Albaz in the graveyard. So from here we'll use the effect of Etude in order to go into our Lulu Wallace. We also put the Rinbrum in the graveyard, turning it into an extra disruption if you haven't already used it, or you've already used it on field and want to get its graveyard effect. Now we'll use the Rinbrum here, banishing the Albion, and then from here we'll be able to get the Branded in Red effect, as we'll get back the Guiding Quem, and from here we can use the Albaz along with the Aluber in order to go into our Lubellion. We'll then be able to pitch one, as we're going to trigger the Branded Lost, and if you would like to, the Lulu as well. But from here we'll then be able to resolve our stuff for the Mirror Jade along with the Search, which will get us into the Cartesia. And we'll also get the Lulu Wallace on board, giving us the extra form of disruption if a card happens to leave the extra deck, which we have a Mirror Jade to make that happen. And I'm going to start this one with a somewhat more awkward hand, and I don't want to necessarily paint it out as too awkward because we do have Branded Fusion. There's not much that we can do above Ash here. We're going to start with the Branded Opening, which will bring out the Quem. The Quem can then use its effect, which will send the Branded Lost. We'll then use the Retribution to get back the Branded Lost, and from here we can activate the Lost, activate the Branded Fusion, and then from here we'll be able to go into our Albion, as we're going to send the Cartesia along with the Albaz, use the Albion, trigger the Quem, as we'll then be able to get the branded Lost effect as well as Chainlink 3. Then we'll get ourselves the Mercarier, revive the Cartesia, as we'll be able to go into our Lubellion by using the kit along with the Albaz, as we're going to now go into our Mirror Jade by pitching the Ad Libitum, and we can also use the Cartesia to go into our Grand Ganol. And then from here, we're going to get into our Mirror Jade, as we'll then be able to get the send off of the Grand Ganol, as we'll send the Lubellion, tribute off the Albion for the Lubellion, use the Lubellion's effect in order to get the branded Etude, go into our end phase, use the Cartesia to get that back, use the Albion, which will get us a set as we get the branded in red, and on our opponent's turn, we'll have the ability to use the Etude's effect, go summon away into our Lulualith using the Grand Ganol along with the Guiding Quem, use the effect of the Mirror Jade if you would like to, as we're going to also use the branded in red, again just showing everything. Now for the final hand, and you see that we have another branded opening hand, and we're going to start this one by using it in order to pitch the Tragedy and get out the Guiding Quem, as we'll get the Tragedy Chainlink 1, Quem Chainlink 2, we'll be able to get the dump for the Cartesia as we get the Aluber to hand, and then we'll go into the main phase where we can normal summon the Aluber, get its effect, which will be able to get us the branded fusion, activate the branded fusion, and then from here we'll be able to go into our Albion, sending the Lubellion along with the Albaz, trigger the Quem, the effect of the Albion as well to fuse, as we'll go into the Lubellion and revive the Cartesia, and then from here we'll use the effect of the Lubellion, chain the Cartesia, as we'll be able to go into our Grand Ganol, and then from here we'll be able to go into our Mirror Jade, as we're going to get the send off the Grand Ganol, and then we're going to send the Ad Libitum there, as we're going to use the effect of Lubellion, or the special summon of Lubellion to tribute the Albion, and get the Etude on board, as we're then going to set the branded Expulsion, go to the end phase where we can use Cartesia along with the Albion, and then from here we'll be able to set the branded in red off of that Albion. This basically gives us the same setup where we have the branded Etude for the Synchro Summon, we have the branded in red that you've seen previously along with the Expulsion, the Mercarier for the extra piece of monster negation, which is definitely kind of nice. With all of the combos out of the way, we can finally get onto the deck profile, but I'd like to get over the rest of the new cards first, and the first one we have is Bestial Dispatter. You'll notice that we're only on 2 level 6 Bestials, which is why I don't have it in the extra deck. I feel like in a Bestial heavier lineup you could play it, but it reads that it takes 1 tuner plus 1 non-tuner dragon monsters. You can target 1 banished light or dark monster, special summon it to your field. When your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can target 1 banished card, shuffle it into the deck, then if you were that card's owner, destroy that monster. If your opponent was, negate that activated effect. You can only use each effect of Dispatter once per turn. Then for the second card that we have here, and I'll have pictures for all of these throughout the remainder of the video, so that you know and can see what these blank cards are, but it takes 1 tuner plus 1 non-tuner light and or dark monster, and for this card Synchro Summon, you can treat 1 light or dark monster you control as a tuner. If this card is special summoned, you can target 1 card on the field, banish it, and this card gains the following effect. Based on the original attributes of the material used for its Synchro Summon. Light, synchro monsters you control are unaffected by your opponent's activated monster effects. Dark, your monsters cannot be destroyed by battle. Finally, we have the Blazing Branded King, and this one reads, choose 1 fusion monster you control that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material, and negate the effects of all face-up cards currently on the field. So it's basically a Harpy's Featherstorm, but not just for your opponent, and until the end of this turn. During the end phase, if a fusion monster was sent to your graveyard this turn, you can add this card from your graveyard to your hand, and you can only use 1 Blazing Branded King effect per turn, and only once that turn. So a set of powerful cards that we're getting in Cyberstorm Access with the additions of Etude and Guiding Quem as well. You probably saw how much Guiding Quem changes the build in itself because of all of the extra plays it gives you. Now keep in mind that in the video of the 3rd place list where they played the Nadir Servant and they had the Springen's Kit, they were also playing the Branded in High Spirits and the Sprint, and in this particular build I'm not doing so because we now have the Guiding Quem, so I'm thinking it's not needed anymore. It's because we can do the same thing with Quem and just save ourselves the space. But we also still do play the Springen's Kit because it is something that you can do to extend your plays further beyond, which is still nice since we have the ability to do stuff like send Cartesia or Albion to the graveyard now off of Quem, giving us the extra search slot that we can get Springen's Kid through the Branded Lost. You'll also notice that we're on the 2 Lulualith, and this could be Draco Berserker of the Tenny, this could be another fusion, but the reason I have two Lulu is because there are times where you want to send this to the graveyard off either Grand Ganol or Mirror Jade, and then having the ability to still synchro summon it with Etude is important in my opinion, so that's why you see the two Lulu. Now, you can actually play a copy of Dark Magician along with the Dragoon if you would like to. I just don't like the idea of playing the extra brick when we literally have 16 one-ofs, which may have been one of the first things that you noticed in this deck. But outside of that, all of the other options are pretty self-explanatory. The Garura Mud Dragon are things that you can put into the side deck. I don't have them in the main deck because of the space we need, but more importantly, when you're using Super Poly with Albaz, as you see, we're on 3 Albaz and the Super Poly, not just for Kashtira, but when you're going first and you see those hands with Albaz, along with 4 other random cards that you can't play with because they're going second or whatever, you can still set the Albaz, set the Super Poly, and it gives you a play that your opponent can't respond to, which makes it better than playing something like Book of Eclipse, especially when you consider that Albaz just takes care of any extra deck monster, so there's a lot of things that you can take out using this. Your opponent's Naturia Exterio from the Super Heavy Samurai deck. There's also stuff like Cheng Ying that your opponent may make that you can use the Albaz along with the Cheng Ying to go into the Mirror Jade, assuming you're going first and you set the Albaz. But you'll also see that there's other stuff like the Eevee deck, which primarily makes 1 extra deck monster, sometimes 2, and being able to get rid of their clump is just a huge part of winning that matchup, so that is kind of important to note. As you see, we also do have the Kaijus for the Nor, but there may be times where you're not going to be able to Kaiju the Nor because they summon it on their turn and they start removing your stuff, so you do have to consider that. The Proskinian is another thing that I would like to make space for eventually, as when playing Super Poly, this is just better. You also have to consider that a Rise Heart is still a card, and Kashtira, presumably if we don't have a ban list by the time Cyberstorm Access drops, so that is important to note. You'll also see that we have the Baron along with the Chaos Angel as mentioned earlier, which are just other level 10 options, but as long as you're only playing 2 level 6 Bestials, I don't think it's worth it. These are just other Bestial options that you have. The Fusion Deployment and Allure of Darkness can definitely be played, but the other one that I want to talk about is Dramaturge, and the important thing about Dramaturge is that in some of the combos I showed, you saw that I was actually adding Branded in red when we had Cartesia already in hand. So if you want to play the extra brick, you can technically grab yourself Branded Opening, pitch back the Cartesia to the graveyard that you added from the graveyard, and then be able to special summon out the Dramaturge in order to get you the extra form of negation versus a matchup that you may want it for, so that is important to note. But outside of that, I don't really think that there's too much left I need to go over that I didn't go over in the combos, so I'll just get on to the card by card. We have the 3 Aluber, the 3 Branded Fusion, the 3 Nadir Servant, the 3 Branded Opening, Called by the Grave, and I think it's still worth playing because you want your Branded Fusion to resolve. Even if you have Nadir Servant, you're not always going to have it, so just having 4 slots to back up Branded Fusion is a lot better than just having 1. And then from here, we have the Branded Lost, Branded in Red, Guiding Quem, Cartesia, Ad Libitum, Bestial Baldrake, the Branded Etude, Branded Retribution, Saronir, Tragedy, Springen's Kit, Albion, Mercarier, Lubellion, Branded Expulsion, the 3 Evenly, the 3 Super Poly, the 3 Radiant, and the 3 Albaz to round out the main deck. For the extra deck, we have the 2 Mirror Jade, the 2 Lubellion, the 2 Albion, the 1 New Albion, the 1 Rinbrum, the 1 Grand Ganol, the 1 Quiriti, the 1 Masquerade, or it can be 2 Masquerades. Then we have the Dragos Depelia, the Guardian Chimera, along with the 2 Lulu Wallace to round out the deck profile. But anyways, if you made it this far into the video, I thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. It's Boned, signing out.